It's estimated to affect about 11 million people.
Wow.
And probably it's a lot more because a lot of people haven't been diagnosed. Maybe they don't go to the eye doctor, they don't have any symptoms, so they haven't gone. So you need to have an eye exam to know whether you have macular degeneration or not.
What are the best foods to eat for eye health?
Great question. So as the name implies, carrots are the tip of the iceberg. Everybody thinks eye health, carrots. I got to eat those carrots, get my beta carotene. But the truth is our eyes are so complex. They have so many different parts to them, and each of those parts has unique nutrients they need to stay healthy. So the key is we need a diversity of nutrients. And that's what I really try to get at in the book is have that diversity in your diet. And many of the nutrients are vitamins, antioxidants, minerals. Then there are some unique nutrients that we can talk about, the eye health nutrients, the macular carotenoids, which I'm sure you're familiar with, and I've heard you talk about them as well. So those are all important. And it's really about having that diversity and cycling through different foods. So, some of my patients say, well, my eye doctor told me to eat leafy greens because I am at risk for macular degeneration. And I ask them, okay, so what do you eat then if you're eating leafy greens? And they say, well, I eat spinach. I have a spinach smoothie every day. I said, but that's not enough. You need to not just it's great that you're doing that, but rotate through all the different foods to get all the nutrients you need. So
is that why dietary diversity is so important?
Basically, yes. Yeah. Our bodies were not made to eat the same thing day in, day out. We need to have that diversity.
And also, if you're eating like a raw spinach smoothie every day, I would imagine you're consuming a ton of oxalates, and like, not that I have a problem with those. I don't think that those are a concern for most people, but it's like what you're doing every single day what you're eating starts to matter more when you're eating it every single day.
Yes. And something even as simple as water. We all think, okay, we need to stay hydrated, but you can overdose on water. People don't realize that. It's great. Yes, it's an important nutrient for our body, but you don't want to do it to an extreme. And you want to mix it up sometimes. Other types of drinks, other types of leafy greens. So that's kind of my take-home point with the book. And then I do have some other strategies I recommend as well, which we can get into.
Well, when it comes to eye health, so what are your favorite leafy greens? And what's in leafy greens that make them so valuable from an eye health perspective?
Yeah. So if I had to choose the number one food that would support eye health, it would be kale. And I know people can, it can be very
Dave Asprey, you hear that?
Polarizing. Yes. Some people love kale and some people absolutely eliminate it from their diet. But the reason why kale may be a great choice for eye health is because not only is it very super rich in the macular carotenoids, so lutein and zeaxanthin, but it also provides vitamin A, vitamin C, lots of minerals. So in terms of the nutrient profile, it's a great food. Some people call it a superfood, but then again, some people don't like it.
Some people don't even think, some people will argue that it's not even food, that it's like a garnish, that like it used to be something that like these fast food chains would buy en masse just to like garnish the, their salad bars.
Absolutely, yeah. And even now today when we get takeout, Japanese takeout, you have your little piece of kale on the side, and it's more than just that. It's more than just a garnish, but all types of leafy greens are great. So even if you don't like kale, you don't like spinach, that's fine. You can have something else. You can even have broccoli. That also provides lutein, zeaxanthin. Avocados provide some degree of that. And then there are the colorful vegetables. Like, for example, many people like bell peppers, but specifically, if you're going to go for eye health, the bang for your buck is going to be in the orange and the yellow bell peppers. Because those pigments are made by lutein or created by lutein and zeaxanthin in the food. So choose those types of foods. Have that diversity. So again, don't just only have the leafy greens. Include some of the other sources of lutein, zeaxanthin. And another great food, which is not a plant-based food, but it's a great food that provides lutein and zeaxanthin, is egg yolk. I know you love eggs.
Speaking my language.
So that a lot of people also, they eat eggs, but they throw away the yolk because of whatever reason. Maybe they're worried about cholesterol, which has been shown now not to really be an issue for cholesterol, but eat the yolk because that beautiful orange color is because of these pigments.
Interesting. So macular carotenoids, right?
Yes.
Macular carotenoids.
Yeah.
And if you're concerned about eye health, what you mentioned about kale is the number one source, correct?
Yes, it is in terms of per gram, weight, it is the number one source.
So how do these carotenoids actually protect the eye?
So I love this. Nature is amazing. Nature put these carotenoids in a very specific location in the eye to protect our eyes against toxicity, mainly light toxicity. So UV light, blue light, these pigments, they're big molecules actually. They're antioxidants. They're really large molecules. What they do is they absorb these types of light, these wavelengths, and they neutralize them. So the light doesn't cause toxicity to the delicate retinal structures underneath. And so they're called macular carotenoids because I'll just give you a little bit of eye anatomy here. The back of our eye is the retina, and the retina is the light sensing tissue. And the retina is kind of like a bullseye. It's like a 360-degree structure, but the peripheral retina takes care of our peripheral vision. The more you get to the center, the more that area takes care of our central vision. The center part of the retina is the macula. So imagine a bullseye, and right in the middle, well, I would say almost middle, is the macula. And even within that, there is the fovea. And the fovea is what's responsible for our 20/20 vision. If you don't have a good fovea, you're not going to be able to see 20/20. And these macular carotenoids are specifically placed in the fovea because that's the most sensitive area. And so it's really phenomenal how our eye has evolved and nature has put these carotenoids there. So I tell my patients, we have internal sunglasses, we have internal blue blockers if you just eat these foods.
Whoa. So these macular carotenoids found in kale, egg yolks, avocados, as you've mentioned, they act in a way like internal blue blockers.
Exactly. Yeah. And many people don't realize that. So I get moms asking me all the time, my kid's on a screen. I'm so worried. Should I get them blue blocking glasses? What should I do? Should I get a screen filter? And I always tell them, well, first and foremost, make sure your kids, your whole family is getting enough of these nutrients in their diet. And then if you're having issues, then maybe you can supplement with getting blue blocking glasses. That's a whole other Pandora's box about blue blocking glasses. But
wow. So these pigments actually can help prevent changes associated with various disease states, right? Like they can help prevent age-related macular degeneration.
Exactly. Yes. So we know that as people get older, their levels of these macular carotenoids decrease. And as eye doctors, we have ways to measure this. There's an actual metric called macular pigment optical density. It's getting a little bit scientific and nerdy, but MPOD. And we can actually measure the amount of macular carotenoids in the eye.
Wow.
And so we know that levels decline, and people who have really the lowest levels of these macular carotenoids are most at risk for macular degeneration. And it is, your listeners may have heard of macular degeneration, but it's the leading cause of blindness amongst elderly people.
Wow.
And it's preventable. It's preventable if you take the right measures nutritionally, lifestyle-wise. You can prevent it. So the first and foremost defense is nutrition. If you get those macular carotenoids in your diet. Now, I'll give you some numbers here for your listeners.
We love it.
If anyone's interested. So how much of these macular carotenoids do we need? There's no official U.S. RDA for these types of nutrients, but it's estimated that the U.S. Population isn't getting enough because adults need about 6.5 milligrams of lutein a day. And most of us get 1 to 2 milligrams a day. Even some people on the best of diets aren't getting enough. And in terms of the second macular carotenoid, zeaxanthin, we need about 1 milligram a day, and most people are getting less than 1 milligram a day.
Wow.
Then there are certain populations in the world who get tremendous amounts of these macular carotenoids. For example, people who live in the Fiji Islands, this is one population that's been studied, they get 25 milligrams a day of these macular carotenoids, just based off their type of diet that they're eating. And they have really low rates of macular degeneration.
Wow. Is macular degeneration common here in the U.S.?
Extremely common. Yeah, it's estimated to affect about 11 million people.
Wow.
And probably it's a lot more because a lot of people haven't been diagnosed. Maybe they don't go to the eye doctor, they don't have any symptoms, so they haven't gone. So you need to have an eye exam to know whether you have macular degeneration or not. And that number is expected to double in the next couple of decades.
Wow.
So as our population's getting older, or unfortunately our diets aren't sufficient to provide these nutrients, those numbers are going to be rising.
And that leads to blindness?
Yes. So a certain type of blindness, not complete blindness where you can't see any light whatsoever. Macular degeneration causes central loss of vision. So remember, the macula is the bullseye, it's the middle. And so if you have degeneration in that part, then those cells atrophy, they die. And so people have a big blind spot. So imagine you're walking around, you can't see in the middle, you can't read, you can't see people's faces. You can see peripherally, you can navigate, hopefully you don't bump into things, but it's really devastating because people can't read, they can't look at their phones, they can't use a device, they can't work, they can't drive. It can be really debilitating.
Are there genes associated with increased risk for age-related macular degeneration? Because if I recall correctly, a couple of years ago, I did 23andMe, and one of the disease risks that it highlighted for me was age-related macular degeneration.
So you're not alone. I have the same genes. I did it as well, just for fun. And so the truth is there are over 50 genes that have been identified that are linked to macular degeneration. What they really do, we don't understand. Most of them, we don't understand. Some are involved in mitochondrial dysfunction. Some of those genes are involved in lipid metabolism. Some of them are involved with oxidative stress. So what most of them what they do in the body we don't or in the eye we don't understand. There are two that are tested by a lot of the home genetic test companies, and one of them is CFH, complement factor H, which is related to the inflammation pathway. And the other one is ARMS2, which is the one I have. I don't know which one you have, but it's one of the two tested on 23andMe. And that one's related to mitochondrial dysfunction. So that much we know on a large scale, kind of like a bird's eye view. But what these genes actually do, we don't know. And there are other tests that can be done. If anyone's interested, if they have a family history of macular degeneration, they're worried about it, they have other risk factors, and they want to know what their actual risk is, it's better to get a really focused genetic test that looks at the 14 most well-researched genes, and it will actually give you a risk profile based on your specific SNPs, your small nucleotide polymorphisms. It'll give you a 2-year risk, a 5-year risk, and a 10-year risk based off of your profile. So don't just look at those two. It's really a lot more complicated than that. And then some other things also play a role. So smoking is a major, major risk factor. And we know from twin studies that people who smoke, if there are two twins, one who smokes, the other one doesn't smoke, the twin who smokes has a more than double risk of developing macular degeneration. We know that body weight is a factor. So people who are obese, who are overweight, have a higher risk. And interestingly, education is a risk factor. So I don't know why, but studies have shown that people who have higher levels of education beyond high school have a lower risk, and those who have not graduated high school have a higher risk for macular. It's very unusual. I'm not sure exactly. It's probably other socioeconomic issues or factors that play into it.
I mean, I feel like low education is like a risk for like pretty much every chronic disease because it correlates so tightly with all these other negative aspects of one's diet and lifestyle, right? Like access to healthy food, et cetera.
Yeah. So if anyone's done that genetic testing and they're worried about it, I'm just going to tell you, take a step back and look at the bigger profile. And if you're seriously worried about it, then ask your ophthalmologist if they can run this genetic test for you.
But are these genetic risk factors, or are they like deterministic genes? Like are
They're
genes
not.
destiny when it comes to eye health?
No, absolutely not. Again, it's a combination of those genes plus the lifestyle factor. So it is nature and nurture. Absolutely. And diet is key. Also, we know that people who exercise have a lower risk of progression of macular degeneration. There's some interesting work being done with red light therapy and infrared light therapy.
Talk to me about that, because I'm the biggest skeptic when it comes to red light therapy, but subjectively, I have a red light device and I use it and I know that I feel great after I use it, but it's one of these things that I do. I've seen the science, but it's such a hard pill to swallow for a skeptic such as myself, that like red light is having this like physiologic effect below the surface.
Yeah, so there is a device that's being investigated. It's actually approved in Europe. It's not approved in the US yet. But there are clinical trials using red light at 680 nanometers and infrared light at 860 nanometers, eyes closed, exposure to red light for 2 to 3 minutes. And that red light and infrared light is the theory behind it is that it's actually stimulating mitochondrial function and keeping them healthy, basically.
Wow.
So it's helping with metabolism.
That's amazing.
That's a thought.
Yeah.
So some of my colleagues are working on these projects, and hopefully they'll get they'll get published, and then the FDA will look at it and decide whether, these types of devices are going to be approved for eye health. But it's in the very early stage, but I think it's really cutting edge. Considering red light and infrared light is being promoted for so many other aspects of health. If you're using it for your skin health, for your joint pain, whatever you're using it for, if you spend a couple of minutes just with your eyes closed, looking, facing it, you could get that added benefit as well.
I've never done red light therapy more diligently than after I was diagnosed with Horner syndrome. And I stood in front of that thing every day. And maybe it played a role in my quote unquote recovery for at least the observable symptoms of it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wouldn't deny that. Who knows?
Yeah.
Right.
Who
knows?
Do you use it? Red light therapy?
I do. I use it. Mm-hmm.
Just on your
I was nervous. Being an eye doctor, I don't want to shine bright lights into my eyes. But if it's done correctly, you want to have it not right up against your eye, about 12 to 14 inches away. Again, eyes closed. And the preliminary studies have shown that as little as 2 to 3 minutes, 3 or 4 times a week is enough. You don't have to do it every day.
For what? For what outcome? For
eye health, for macular degeneration and glaucoma. Those are the 2 conditions that it's being looked at for. And I think probably it's going to be expanded to other things as well, like dry eye and other types of autoimmune eye conditions. There's some inflammatory conditions that can affect the eyes. So I think ultimately it's going to go down that route. But for now, the 2 main ones are macular degeneration and glaucoma.
There's a lot of science on red light photobiomodulation.
Exactly.
It's insane.
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
It really is.
There needs to be more, obviously, but what's presently out there is pretty compelling. Crazy.
Yeah, and I was skeptical just like you, but I'm getting convinced. So
amazing.
And my thought with all of this is, as long as it doesn't hurt, it's not going to harm your eyes, you can try it. People ask me about infrared sauna. They ask me about cryotherapy. They ask me about doing IVs. And I tell them, as long as you're not doing anything to an extreme and you're doing it, within the bounds of safety, whatever has been established, it should be okay.
I love that. What about the more subtle degradation that occurs just over the course of aging? I mean, people in advanced age, my eyes just don't work as well as they used to, is a claim that you'll often hear. Do these same foods help to prevent those kinds of changes?
So there are certain kinds of changes that happen. They're kind of inevitable.
Are they?
Some things, yes. So one thing is presbyopia, which is the need for reading glasses. Almost everyone, 90% of the population, develops presbyopia. And usually it happens in one's 40s, 50s, where you suddenly notice that you can't read a menu anymore, or you can't see that small font anymore on a bottle. If you're looking at an ingredient label, it's really hard to see that. And you have to hold things further and further out to see them clearly. That's presbyopia.
We don't know how to prevent that yet?
Not yet, but there are treatments that can be used. Most of them are interventions, surgeries that can be done, reading glasses. There are other hacks that I recommend, device hacks, things like that can help. That is something that, really, it's a physiologic change that happens in the lens of the eye. So normally our lens, it sits behind the colored part of the eye, so we don't see it, but it's there, and it's a dynamic structure, so it changes shape. So if you're looking at distance, it has a certain shape. If you're looking at something up close, it gets thicker in the middle. It changes its shape. As we get older, that lens starts to stiffen. And these are proteins within the lens that kind of get really stiff. And so the lens is not as flexible. And so when we're changing our distance, our focus from far away to up close, we can't do it. And that's why, we just kind of have to hold things further and further out. But I think that probably in the next 10 years, there's going to be some cure for presbyopia. Now there are treatments, but it's not a cure. I do think that there's a lot of, again, cutting edge work that's being done research-wise to reduce that stiffening of lens proteins.
And
there may be an eye drop that people can use
Wow.
to maybe keep the lens proteins soft and malleable so they don't get stiff.
What about, are they made of collagen? Is there any evidence that people that perhaps adhere to a more Mediterranean style diet have, a decelerated rate of that occurring? Or, there's got to be some studies on that, no?
So yes, it's more so not specifically collagen, but it has to do with antioxidants. So people who have more antioxidants in their diet, or if they take supplements, they have lower rates of things like cataract. They have lower rates of macular degeneration. They have lower rates of glaucoma. And that's what I also talk about in the book is how do you get these antioxidants, like the whole range of them. So not just the macular carotenoids, but vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin E, glutathione, alpha-lipoic acid, N-acetylcysteine. These are all great nutrients for our eyes. Specific to collagen, I want to address that because I'm glad you raised it. So much of the eye is made out of collagen.
Love it.
All types of collagen.
I'm drinking a little bit of collagen right here I have like a blend of, I'm drinking electrolytes with collagen. I think collagen is as a supplement, what do you think? Any evidence that it's helpful?
So, I would love to say that it is, but we don't know because if you consume collagen, it's made out of amino acids. There's again, different types, type 1, type 2, type 4, it's all in the eye. When you consume it, your body's going to break it down. So yes, you have those building blocks of the collagen, but are those building blocks going to be put back together? That we don't know. Right. So that long molecule of collagen is not going to get absorbed by your gut.
Yeah.
That's the thing. So I don't think it's bad, but whether it directly helps with eye health or not, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
In the future, there may be some other types of collagen delivery systems that may be used, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, but topical collagen, let's say in drop form. If somebody has a corneal issue or some other, issue on the surface of their eye, if the surface is getting thin, if there's a degeneration going on, perhaps in the future that topical form of collagen may be important.
I mean, I think when you supply the body with those collagenous amino acids, you're at least hypothetically increasing the pool of available substrates with which the body can then create new collagen. And then you couple that with vitamin C, which we know supports collagen synthesis. There's studies that have shown, and I'm not saying that I know that this can affect the eye in any way, but that have shown that supplemental collagen can accelerate wound healing, good for your joints, skin and nails. So, again, hypothetically, I would expect it to play some role in helping support eye health.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you supply your body with those substrates, your body will make what it needs. And it's not just collagen. Actually, if you have those amino acids in your diet, you're going to be making more glutathione also. And that's a very potent antioxidant for general body health, but also for eye health. So many benefits.
Love that. So wait, before I rudely cut you off and started talking about collagen supplements, what were you going to say? So the eye is basically made of collagen.
The majority of the eye is made of, so the white part of the eye is called the sclera, collagen. The cornea, which is the very surface of the eye, the curved structure, it's clear, it's transparent, made out of collagen. The lens, which I was talking about before, it itself is not made out of collagen, but its covering is made out of collagen. And then there's more collagen inside the eye. So the jelly inside the eye, the vitreous jelly that many people get floaters because there's changes in the collagen in the vitreous jelly. Also, it's type 4 collagen. And then within the retina, there's other forms of collagen as well. There's so many types of collagen in the eye.
And what degrades collagen? I mean, you mentioned smoking. I think smoking is like a big, there are various diet and lifestyle factors that that accelerate the degradation of collagen.
So I'm not an expert in that, but let's talk a little bit about floaters, because I know that's like a big symptom or a common symptom that many people have. So floaters are common. About 75-80% of us have floaters.
Is that like what is that exactly?
Do you have floaters?
I don't know. It's like when you look at the sun or something and you see something, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. So if you look at something high contrast, like whether it's a white wall or if you're looking at the blue sky and you see these little lines or dots floating around in your vision, those are floaters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're fun.
They're fun. But some people think, they get scared. They think, oh, there's a bug inside my eye, or there's a myth out there on the internet or on social media that these collagen floaters are actually parasites.
Whoa.
They're not parasites. They're collagen.
People on the internet will believe anything.
Yeah, so I kind of find it humorous, but I want to try to dispel some of those myths out there. It's collagen. So the jelly in the back of the eye helps keep the shape of the eye. And it's made out of mainly water and hyaluronic acid and collagen. And as we get older, all of that protein, parts, they start to break down. And when the collagen breaks down, we see it as these fibrils, these lines, these dots floating around. That's all it is.
Wow.
So if you have floaters, I know they're annoying. I have tons of floaters. I've had floaters since I was 5 years old.
But there's nothing pathologic about them, right?
Well, only if there's a change in your floaters. So if you suddenly wake up or one day you have a shower of new floaters and you've never had that before, and you start to see lots of flashing lights, like little sparkles, like, less than a second, that's concerning. That could imply there's a retinal tear, retinal break. That needs to be checked out. But if you have regular run-of-the-mill floaters, you've had them chronically, that's nothing to be worried about.
Very interesting. One compound that you talk about in the book that I was super excited to see mentioned is astaxanthin. Tell me about that, because that's a supplement that I've been taking personally for, over a decade at this point, just based on what I read about it 10 years ago. And I know there's a ton of new research coming out about it. What is astaxanthin? Where can we find it? And what are the benefits of it?
Yeah. First of all, Max, you are always so ahead of the game.
I love hearing you say that.
I learn so much from you. Every time I listen to your podcast, I learn something new because you read about things and
that's so sweet.
You're very proactive. So I love astaxanthin, and I think that it really is gaining the recognition that it deserves. Not fully, but I think more and more people, more and more healthcare providers are recognizing its value. We know from studies that it's a very potent antioxidant, more potent than vitamin C, vitamin E, glutathione, alpha-lipoic acid. It's very, very, it's like the king of antioxidants. So it's a really interesting story about astaxanthin.
Ooh, I want to hear it.
Do you know the story?
No.
About algae?
No.
Okay, so.
Maybe I do. I don't know, but tell me.
Okay, so millions of years ago in prehistoric times, there was this algae, and it lived in very arid conditions and in the desert with lots of sun, not enough water. So it had to keep its DNA protected. And it evolved over time to make this super antioxidant, which ultimately was astaxanthin. So it created this carotenoid. It's a red carotenoid. It's in the same carotenoid family, but not a macular carotenoid. So it's like a cousin to vitamin A, to beta carotene. So this red pigment protected the algae. And so they thrived. They survived, despite the worst climate conditions possible. And then marine animals started eating the algae. And so they took on that pinkish, reddish color. So when you see flamingos, they're pink because they eat this algae.
Amazing.
Or other foods that have eaten the algae. Yeah. Salmon eat this algae. All kinds of other marine animals are pink because of this algae. So now this algae, Haematococcus pluvialis is the name of it. So it's being grown in algae farms to harvest astaxanthin. You can also get marine forms of astaxanthin, but that's where it originally comes from, is from this algae. And it is, for eye health, it's just starting to gain, again, recognition, and our understanding of it is just evolving. There are some preliminary studies looking at macular degeneration and its benefits for macular degeneration, looking at blood flow to the back of the eye, looking at inflammatory markers, for example, after cataract surgery. There's one study done where people had cataract surgery and they were given astaxanthin before the cataract surgery, and there was another group that were not given astaxanthin. And they found that the group that got astaxanthin had decreased inflammatory markers and faster healing than the group that didn't get the astaxanthin.
Damn, that's awesome.
Yeah, so it's I think just at the cusp of really becoming. I hope it's going to become mainstream. I really do, because it's so powerful. Yeah,
it seems it. I kind of tell that, or I've heard that story, like, I guess phrased a little bit differently. The way that I think about astaxanthin, one of the reasons why I think it's so cool, is that this algae just sits at the top of the pond or whatever, or the river bed, just soaking up these damaging rays from the sun all day. I mean, you think about, like, for somebody like me with my complexion, if I spend 30 minutes out in the summer LA sun, like, that sun is doing damage to my skin, Obviously, some sun is super healthy. I'm not anti-sun or anything like that. But it's like this algae can't just get up and go into the shade. It's sitting out there all day, right? And we know that the sun's rays can damage, like, genetic material. Mm-hmm. So it, as a result, as a protective measure, it had to generate this, like, incredibly powerful internal sunscreen. so to speak, which, then yeah, the salmon eat, the flamingo eat, and then we have the ability to ingest when we eat those foods. Well, not, I don't know anybody who's eating flamingo regularly, but like salmon, or supplementing with it. And I've taken 12 milligrams a day every day for as long as I can remember, pretty much. I mean, there'll be like a couple, months here and there where I'll lapse, but in general, it's like one of the few supplements that I've been like really consistent with, along with like fish oil and, magnesium.
Yeah, I think the recommended dose is anywhere from 4 to 12 milligrams a day. And it's got other benefits too, skin benefits. I don't know yet. You probably know better than I do if it's been investigated for gut issues as well.
I don't know.
I would think that it has been, but
yeah, not to my knowledge. But I would suspect that it was highlighted in there was a paper written by Bruce Ames, who's like a noted aging scientist. He himself is aging. He's an old dude, but he's written a lot about. He coined the triage theory of aging, which is like when micronutrients are in scarce supply in the body, they get triaged to support processes that ensure one's immediate survival. And they basically get deprived from processes that can facilitate like long-term health, which is one of the reasons why like adequate micronutrient status is so important. But anyway, he wrote a paper a couple years ago that caught my eye, and it was like he highlighted about 10 or 12 different what he called putative longevity agents, like micronutrients that are particularly supportive of longevity. And lutein and zeaxanthin were two of them, and so was astaxanthin. And so, yeah, I'm a huge fan.
Yeah, so just to talk a little bit more about lutein and zeaxanthin. So not only is it good for eye health, or both of them good for eye health, they're great for brain health also. There are numerous studies, cognitive studies, looking at people's intake of these macular carotenoids, and they benefit. So, and the eye is a direct extension of the brain. So if you're taking it for your eyes, you're also benefiting your brain. So I kind of like to think of them as a combo unit.
Fascinating. So would you say that what's good for the eyes generally are going to be good for the brain as well?
Yes. So the brain it has a very high metabolic rate. Probably the highest metabolic rate in the body, but also the retina does, what I was talking about earlier, that light sensing tissue. It's constantly, capturing light, metabolizing light, and sending off electrical signals, and it's constantly having to renew itself. So it's highly metabolically active. So similarly, both organs need certain nutrients to maintain that high metabolism. So they need all those great mitochondrial nutrients, but they also need nutrients that are antioxidants, because when they are so metabolically active, they're generating a lot of byproducts that can be toxins. So you want to also have enough antioxidants there to counteract that high metabolic rate.
Yeah.
Which you would think is a good thing, but it can have its, negative side as well.
Yeah, well, it's like the double-edged sword of like existence, right? Like the more time you spend exposed to oxygen, which you need to survive, like the more that oxygen is also oxidizing you.
Exactly.
And accelerating the processes of decay and entropy. How did you get into eye health? Like what made you decide to study that and make it your life's work?
So back when I was in undergrad, I was in a program where I knew I was going to be going to med school. So I was kind of primed for it. And in my senior year of undergrad, I was just, I had some time off. I think it was like our winter break or summer break or something. So I was shadowing a lot of different doctors. So I shadowed like a pediatrician, I shadowed a cardiologist, all different types of fields, just to kind of get a sense of what I may want to do. And then one of our family friends came over for dinner, and he was doing his residency in ophthalmology. When he heard I was shadowing people, he said, "Why don't you come spend the day with me?" And I said, "Ooh, the eye? I don't know about that." but he convinced me, and one day changed my life, because I got there super early. We were there at 7 a.m. I went to surgery with him. I saw what he did. He did cataract surgeries. He made people see again, restored their vision. It was just unbelievable. He operated on kids, and then he went to the clinic, and he was taking care of patients with diabetes and high blood pressure and all these systemic diseases. And I was like, wow, this is really so impactful. This little organ can, we take it for granted. Most of us who don't have eye issues take our eyesight for granted. But if something goes wrong, you really can be quite, incapacitated. So to be able to restore that gift of sight was something that I just absolutely fell in love with.
That's
so
amazing.
Ever since then, again, this is before I even started medical school, I had a sense that I wanted to go into ophthalmology. But then in medical school, I still kept my mind open. I explored other fields. And I also really loved neurology. So it was a really big decision I made. Do I do ophtho or do I do neurology? And I chose ophthalmology because of the procedural aspect. Like I like working with my hands and the technical aspect of things. But then, I was doing my ophthalmology residency. I was actually here in California. I was at UC Irvine doing my ophthalmology residency.
Wow.
So just,
down the street.
Down the street from you, yeah. And I was really thinking, like, do I just want to continue with just general ophthalmology or do I want to specialize? And I really thought back to neurology because I loved it so much. And then the field of neuro-ophthalmology was an option. And I said, wow, this is something I should look into. And so I decided to do that because it's the perfect melding of both worlds.
So cool.
So, yeah.
I didn't even know that neuro-ophthalmologists existed, that was a thing until I had, a year ago, developed Horner syndrome. And then I was like, wow, you are the exact kind of, and there's not many of you, correct me if I'm wrong.
No. So unfortunately, we're a dying field because not enough people are going into it. In the US, I would say there are probably less than 300 of us.
Wow.
Many people are retiring. And again, not enough new young blood into the field. So I don't know what's going to happen down the road, but it's a very unique subspecialty. You can go into it either from the ophthalmology side or from the neurology side. So there are neurology-trained neuro-ophthalmologists and then ophthalmology-trained neuro-ophthalmologists.
And like, what are the kinds of conditions that would warrant seeing a neuro-ophthalmologist as opposed to just an ophthalmologist?
So we take care of such a wide range of conditions where the brain and the eye is involved. So for example, multiple sclerosis. Multiple sclerosis can cause many types of neurologic symptoms, but one of the most common symptoms is loss of vision from a condition known as optic neuritis. Optic neuritis is inflammation of the optic nerve. So that's one condition that we manage, and oftentimes we're the first doctor to actually diagnose the patient with multiple sclerosis because they come in with an eye issue, and then of course we do their workup, we get their MRI and so forth, and we find that they have signs of this autoimmune disease.
Wow.
Other conditions, so people with brain tumors may have vision issues, strokes. Many people with strokes may have vision issues. Concussion, head trauma. There are a lot of issues after post-concussion. And then the big one is migraine. I have a personal interest in migraine because I have migraine myself. And I really, I understand what my patients go through, so I enjoy taking care of them. Not all my neuro-ophthalmology colleagues like to take care of migraine patients, but it is really something that is very near and dear to my heart.
Why would a doctor not enjoy taking care of migraine patients?
Because sometimes they don't get better.
Oh.
Some people have refractory migraine and, they just try medication after medication after medication. But the truth is, what I've learned in my own journey with migraine and also from my patients, it's not medications that are the answer. It's looking at the other root causes of migraine. What's going on nutritionally? Is there a nutritional deficiency? Is there a magnesium deficiency, for example? Is there a toxin that they're being exposed to that may be triggering their migraine? Stress. That stress is like the elephant in the room. So I really enjoy kind of doing that detective work and getting down into the nitty-gritty, but not all of my colleagues do. So
no, I love that you take a more holistic approach. It's amazing. Are there foods or maybe even specific nutrients that can help prevent migraines?
So there's a lot of work that's been done with diet and migraine. And I would say the general consensus is you want to stay away from processed foods. You want to stay away from high sugar content foods. The basics that we talk about a lot in functional medicine, integrative medicine. You want to stay well hydrated. But there are specific ingredients in certain foods that may trigger migraines. For example, for some people, they're very sensitive to histamines. And if they eat histamine-rich foods, that will trigger a migraine. Other people, it could be tyramine, which is a amino acid that is found in fermented types of foods. So some people will have something like a fermented type of cheese, for example, and they'll get a headache like that.
Wow.
And so I think it, again, requires a little bit of detective work if you have migraines to figure out what are your triggers. Do you have a food trigger? Because not everybody does. But if you do, experiment. Try to eliminate it for some time and then reintroduce it and see what happens. And again, it's really being a detective into your own diet and your own health.
You also turned me on to, about a year ago, riboflavin.
Yes. So with migraine, we know that there's mitochondrial dysfunction, and we know for healthy mitochondria that many of the B vitamins are important, but one specific B vitamin is riboflavin, or B2. And so why that particular one is important, we don't understand, but we do know from studies that people who've been given a riboflavin supplement, really high doses of riboflavin, actually 400 milligrams a day, have reduced frequency and severity of migraine.
Wow. And along with riboflavin, like if you were to, put together a migraine prevention starter pack, it would be like, I'm assuming riboflavin's in there, magnesium perhaps.
Yes, it's a definite. So most of us are deficient in magnesium, unfortunately, because of changes in our diet or changes in agricultural practices, and we're just not getting enough of it. So especially if you suffer from migraines, I recommend a chelated form of magnesium. So not a magnesium salt, which is great for other things. It could be great for GI issues or constipation. But if you're looking to decrease your migraines, try to choose a formulation that has magnesium L-threonate or glycinate or malate. Those are kind of my go-to magnesiums for migraine. Not oxide, because oxide is a salt, or citrate, those are salts.
Interesting. And so with these foods, practices, everything you know about, have you been able to get your migraines under control?
Yes, and actually my migraine journey is how I got introduced to functional medicine in the first place.
Wow.
I never even heard about it. Never, until about 7-8 years ago.
About functional medicine?
Yes, I'd never heard about it.
So how did you discover it?
So I was suffering with these, I had migraines since I was in my early 20s, but they were episodic, maybe once a year, every 6 months, not bad. But then in my 40s, when I reached my early 40s, I was going through a really stressful period in my life, from work, from home. We were doing a construction project, and you know how those can go. So it was very, very hard time for me. And I started to get daily chronic migraine. So if you've ever had migraine, it's not an enjoyable, symptom, because there are many symptoms actually, but to have it every single day, wake up with a headache every single day. And this went on for years.
Wow.
I had a daily headache for 4 years. And I live in New York City. I went to the top headache specialists in New York City. And I said, please help me. Like, I can't function. I have brain fog. I can't take care of patients. I can't take care of my family. And what they would do is they would just prescribe for me one medication after another. And first of all, they didn't work. And second of all, if I took a high enough dose of it, I was sleepy or in a, again, like a zombie, like a brain fog zombie. So
wow.
I said, I need to find another solution. Like, there's something else that's missing here. There's got to be a solution to my migraines. So I started talking to people, and I happened to talk to one of my colleagues who happens to be a neuro-ophthalmologist also. And I was telling him about my headaches, and he said, have you ever tried an elimination diet? And I said, wait, what's that? And it's shocking. I had never heard of one before. And so he explained it to me, and he's like, yeah, this is like the mainstay of functional medicine is an elimination diet. And I was like, well, what's functional medicine? And then he started to explain it to me. And I was like, I've never heard of it. How come we've never been told about it? And it made sense. It made total, find the root cause, address the root cause, whether it's your GI health, your gut health, whether it's nutrition, whether it's a toxin, hormone imbalance, whatever it is, find the root cause and address the root cause. So I got turned on to it. I went to my first functional medicine conference. I spent a week with IFM, and I fell in love. And I was like, it's a travesty that most traditionally trained doctors are not exposed to this way of thinking. Yeah. And I decided to get certified.
Wow.
So I got certified. It took me a long time because I was still working and doing everything else, but I got certified. But on the other side, going back to my initial story, once I changed my diet, my migraines improved tremendously. And I cringed to tell you this, but what I was eating before was so bad.
What were you eating before?
So bad. So most of my adult life, I lived off of pizza, ice cream, and Diet Coke.
Wow.
And I was having like 8 to 12 Diet Cokes a day.
Damn.
And not one of my migraine doctors ever sat down and asked me, what are you eating? Or how much caffeine do you have? No one asked me that. And so it took me, going through these 4 years of daily pain, realizing that maybe I was causing my own pain.
And you're so highly educated. And it's like that wasn't an intuitive connection to make after all that training.
Never.
Because in medical school, what? You get like an afternoon of nutrition training,
4
right?
hours. That's, I think back now, I think it was 4 hours.
Wow. And probably only in the context of like how to prevent like obesity or something, right? Like
it was actually in the context of macronutrients. So carbs, fats, proteins, and maybe some of the vitamins.
Just like the basics.
The
Like
basics.
not
Like if
even
you don't
101.
have enough vitamin C, you get scurvy. Like things like that.
Got it.
But not, nothing to the extent that what I learned in my functional medicine courses. So I'm really grateful that I came across that. That added, such an important layer to my understanding of disease and eye health. And this is really why, I kind of, I've changed my career to doing more education. That's the reason why I wrote the book, is to educate not just my patients, but also my colleagues about what are the nutrients that are important for eye health. How can we look at it from a functional medicine lens and use diet and lifestyle as treatments rather than the traditional treatments that we give. So
yeah. Did you ever figure out what the triggers were for you for your migraines?
there were multiple triggers. So it was partially the diet, because I was having this, high sugar processed food diet, but also because we had moved into this, new construction, there was a lot of toxin exposure that I had, a lot of off-gassing. So that was part of it. And then I had some dental issues. So I had some dental work done. And I think that those mercury fillings were also leaching into my blood and causing some of the issues. So I had, slowly I took care of all these things like one by one. And now I'm in a much better place, knock on wood, thankfully. And I think that making those realizations that diet and lifestyle and perhaps the toxins that I was exposed to played a role.
I find subjectively that drinking electrolytes really helps me when I feel like I could potentially have a migraine, like at the very earliest sign of a migraine onset. I drink electrolytes in the form of Element, which is like 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 milligrams of potassium, I think like 60 something milligrams of magnesium. And I find that it helps. Is there any science to that, or is that just...
I love it, what you're saying. I don't know if it's been scientifically investigated. What I can tell you is that one of the I shouldn't say root cause, but one of the triggers for migraine is dehydration. And so if your body is dehydrated, your blood vessels, they tend to kind of shrink down and they become more sensitive to triggers. And so if there's going to be, migraine is we call it a neurovascular issue. So the nerves and the blood vessels get activated. The blood vessels initially, they constrict and then they dilate. So when they constrict, that's when people can get visual symptoms of migraine like aura. I don't know if you've ever had aura, but it's a scary thing. Where people can see flashing lights, like zigzag flashing lights for about 20, 30 minutes, and then the migraine starts.
Wow.
And the aura is because initially there's that constriction of blood vessels.
Wow.
And then once that wave passes, then the blood vessel dilates, and that's what causes the headache. And so theoretically, electrolytes can help stabilize that. So not only the fluid replenishment you're giving through drinking something, water is important, but if you have water with electrolytes, I think that adds an extra kind of protection to your blood vessels, so they're not going to be as susceptible to changes. Interesting.
Yeah, I get, whenever I have migraines, which are very infrequent these days. I mean, I feel like a year ago, I had this, it was probably a confluence of stress, travel. Because one thing that I've learned is that when you're flying in an airplane, it's like a perfect storm for migraineurs. Is that the right term?
Yes. Yeah.
It's like a perfect storm because it's like the stress. It's the stress of air travel, which is inevitably stressful, right? It's the dehydration of like being in that dry cabin. So there's that. Plus the fact that you're off your routine. So you're not eating the things that you would normally eat. The crazy lights, the being like indoors the entire time, recirculated air, probably of pretty poor quality. So it's like all those things and more that just like gang up and make it, make a person that's prone to migraines, like that's a really powerful trigger. And so like, that's when it happened to me. A year ago, I was like flying to Austin, and that's when I had the onset of Horner's, which kind of resolved for a few days, and then it came back when I was flying back to LA. And
it's so fascinating how your episodes correlated with your plane travel.
100%, like very directly. Yeah. And yeah, when I get, and so I haven't really had many migraines since, but I still do occasionally get them. And I always feel like it's on one side of the head. It's always on the right side. And in my sinuses, I feel it. I don't get aura or anything like that, but it's like, if you've ever inadvertently like walked into a pole or been hit in the face, which, like I have at some point in my life, like you get this like weird sensation in your sinus cavity.
Yeah.
So it's like, I get that, but in a very mild way. It's like, I get this like weird sinus sensation. And then, yeah, of course I get the headache, and now I can look in the mirror and I actually start to see like my eyelid like sinking a little bit.
So there's an anatomic explanation for your symptoms.
Really?
Yeah. So migraine is caused by activation of the trigeminal nerve. There's many nerves in the brain, but the trigeminal nerve is the main nerve that gives sensation to the covering of the brain and also to the face and the scalp. And there are 3 branches of the trigeminal nerves. We call them,
like that,
yeah,
right?
like this, yeah. So V1, V2, V3.
Got it.
And these 2, 1 and 2, tend to be activated in migraine. And so many people who have migraine may not actually have a headache. They may have a deep kind of a pressure sensation in their eye socket, or they may actually have like a stabbing sensation in their eye socket, or they may feel that sinus pressure, like there's like a fullness there, but they don't really have any sinus issues. Like they may feel like, oh, I'm getting sinusitis, but never really develops because that branch is getting activated, that V2 branch.
So you're saying it doesn't necessarily originate, the symptomology doesn't necessarily originate in the brain. It's like this like external.
Well, these
Correct me if I'm
are
wrong.
peripheral branches of that deep central nerve.
Got it.
And so I'll just add one more thing. You were talking about plane travel earlier. So one other potential trigger during plane travel is the change in barometric pressure.
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever get weather-related migraines, but I do. So when there's an oncoming storm, I'm like a human barometer. Like I can tell. I start to get a headache.
Whoa.
And so with that, the barometric pressure changes when you go up in an airplane. It's pressurized, but not to the extent it would be if you were on the ground. So that lowering of barometric pressure allows your blood vessels to dilate. And then that can trigger a migraine. So, it's something that happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you so we've talked a little bit about prevention and these like important micronutrients, but are there any, like, what can you do if you're actually having like a migraine to abort it? Is there anything that you could do from like a holistic functional medicine standpoint?
So I love your idea of hydration with magnesium, with the high dose of magnesium. So I would recommend you can do hydration with electrolytes with magnesium, but also a separate magnesium supplement. So take an extra whatever you take, 250 milligrams, 400, 500 milligrams. You can do a B complex. And I also love, this may sound a little odd, but peppermint oil.
Interesting. Why peppermint oil?
For some reason, it has a calming effect on those nerves. So, and there's some studies to show that essential oils, specifically, not just peppermint oil, but peppermint, lavender, and frankincense, which is boswellia. So don't put it in your eye, but I have some patients who have, those migraine sticks. Like you can have like a little container with oil in it, like a mixture of oil with a balm kind of, I don't know, a roller ball. That's what I'm thinking.
Whoa.
Roller ball. So you use that roller ball, you can put it back here on your neck if you have neck issues, or you can put it around your forehead, around your eyebrow, not in your eye, because it's really going to sting if it gets in there. But it really works. And I have some patients who swear by it, where they use their peppermint oil every night. They can't go to sleep unless they have their peppermint oil.
Whoa.
And some people even take the oil, they put it into a diffuser, and they will put their head over the diffuser with a towel and just breathe it in. And that can sometimes help to abort a migraine attack. Another great thing that I just realized, so 2 months ago, I was traveling and I got sick, actually. I got sick with COVID. And I was feeling a little bit better, so I decided to go out sightseeing with my family. And that was a bad mistake because there was an oncoming storm. And I didn't even know, I didn't look at the weather before I went out. But not only was I sick, but then the storm was coming and I got the worst pain right here, like stabbing pain. And I was like, what is going on? And I realized, okay, it's a migraine coming on. And I was out and about. I had nothing. I didn't even have water with me. I didn't have anything that I could take. And I was like, what am I going to do? So I sat in the car and I used acupressure. And it may seem, like a small thing, but I took my fingers and I pressed right on where the nerves, like the anatomic location for where the nerves come out.
The V1 branch of the trigeminal nerve?
Even the subdivisions of the V1 branch.
Okay, where are these?
Okay, so one is right at the medial aspect of your eyebrow. This is the supratrochlear nerve.
Okay.
And this kind of goes up this way, but it also goes deeper into the eye socket. So I pressed there 10 seconds, as hard as I could. 10 seconds. Then I went over to here, like kind of one-third of your brow.
Tracing your eyebrow.
You can trace your eyebrow, but I'm following where the nerves come out from.
Okay.
So here, this is a supraorbital branch of the trigeminal nerve, 10 seconds. Right here, this is a nerve that goes to your sinus.
So just describe it for the listeners, but like kind of where your tear duct
is.
Yes,
just by your nose, kind of by the side aspect of the bridge of your nose. And you'll feel it. Like if you're having a migraine and you put your finger there, you will feel that nerve kind of tingle a little bit.
Whoa.
And then right here, this is the maxillary branch. And if you press right there, right above your cheekbone, like under your eyelid, but above your cheekbone, so 10 seconds at each location. And it was phenomenal. I was really skeptical. I was like, I don't know what else to do. I have to do something. So I did it. And literally it was gone.
Wow.
Within a split. And I didn't believe it. I was like, wait a minute. Did it really go away? And then I did it again just to be safe. Like I did it a second round and it really aborted my migraine. And so I posted on this. I posted this, my story on social media. And I've gotten people who have written in the comments like, I tried it. It works. It's phenomenal.
Wow.
So
that's amazing.
It doesn't hurt. Why not try it?
Instant trick to abort a migraine.
Yes. And I would love, if anyone tries it, please let me know because I am super fascinated in this.
Wow.
I happened to come across it and I think it's such a, overlooked way, acupressure to manage a migraine, self-acupressure, really.
Yeah. So you're just pressing on basically branches of that.
Pressing on the specific branches that are activated. And, for me, my symptom was eye pain. I actually, my migraine started out behind my eye and then they spread to my head. So when it just started behind my eye, that's when I did it. But if it's already gone kind of full force, if it's extended, it may not work.
Wow.
But it's worth trying.
There's other like acupressure points that I feel like people have heard of. Like if you squeeze the part of your hand, I don't know if there's any scientific merit to this, but like between your thumb and your pointer finger, that it can help reduce.
I've heard that too. Yeah. I haven't tried that one. And there are other parts of the face also that people use for migraine.
I guess it depends on like what kind of migraine or like where.
I think, there are probably some protocols I'm not familiar with, the traditional Chinese medicine protocols, but they use certain points for acupuncture and they use other points for acupressure. So.
Wow. So interesting. So what are some of your other favorite foods for eye health? I mean, like people should definitely, the book is like loaded and we'll put a link in the show notes so that people can pick it up and support. But like, yeah, any other, because we've already talked about dark leafy greens, eggs, things like that for these like macular carotenoids. But yeah, what else? Like what are some other high impact foods?
So nuts. Great source of lots of polyphenols, which are antioxidants, and also vitamin E, and also specifically pistachios have lutein and zeaxanthin.
Oh, hell yeah.
So that beautiful color is because of these macular carotenoids. So if you're going to choose a nut for your eyes, pistachios are the way to go, but if you don't like them, almonds are great. You can do walnuts, cashews as well, but pistachios are number one on my list.
That's amazing because I love pistachios. I have a problem. If you put like a bowl of salted pistachios in front of me, no matter how, like, I'm going to eat the whole bowl. It's like, it's really difficult for me to pump the brakes once you get me started. So pistachios, nuts. Nuts are like, I've heard them described as tree eggs. They're like the eggs of the tree.
Yeah.
And we know how beneficial, how healthy eggs are, but I think it's an interesting way to think about nuts, in the same way that like an egg yolk contains literally like a little bit of everything required to grow a neonate, like a new organism of whatever the egg, is from. Tree nuts are also like meant to grow another tree.
Yeah.
So they contain a little bit of everything required to grow a tree.
Yeah, they have all the building blocks.
All the building blocks. And typically, because they're so high fat, loaded with antioxidants that also protect those fats, which is, I think, really relevant to like eye and brain health because, I mean, the brain is made of fat. And I would assume that there's a lot of fat in the eye as well.
So the retina contains the highest level of DHA in the body.
Seriously?
Yes. The retina's obviously, it doesn't weigh that much. It doesn't weigh like the brain. But if you take percentage of weight,
wow, it's
the highest because the retinal cells are constantly turning over and their cell membranes are made out of DHA.
So fat
So
soluble.
omega-3s.
Yeah.
Yeah. We didn't talk about that, but yes, I'm glad you brought it up. Omega-3s.
Are you a fan of like fish oil or just fish in general?
So I happen to be a vegetarian.
Oh, really?
But yes, so fish is a great way to get your omega-3s. And there are studies looking at people who have higher intakes of fish, like fish 2 to 3 times a week. They have lower levels of dry eye symptoms and also lower levels of macular degeneration. So great for eye health. If you don't eat fish, then other types you can try, some of the seeds like hemp seeds, chia seeds, flax seeds, except those don't have DHA, they have ALA. So the ALA has to get converted into DHA. Yeah. So I take an algal oil supplement as my
I love that.
Go-to fish oil, or my substitute fish oil, I should say.
Yeah. Well, some vegetarians, I think, are, reluctant to acknowledge that, like, you can't necessarily optimally get everything that you need from plants, right? Like, because I think people vary in their ability to convert ALA to DHA. And I think women are tenfold better at it than men, but men are pretty poor at it. And women just in general are not great at it either. But,
yeah, I heard a number somewhere like only 10% gets converted or something like that. It's a really low number.
Yeah, so you take algal DHA. Where do you get your astaxanthin from? If that's found predominantly.
Also algae.
Algae, got it. So you take like algal oil. Interesting.
Yeah. And then in terms of other foods, I have a couple of spices that I highlighted in the book. Turmeric.
Ooh.
So turmeric is really, or curcumin, I should say, has been looked at for many types of eye diseases. So we know it's a very potent anti-inflammatory. It's an antioxidant. It has antimicrobial properties. So it's been looked at for conditions like dry eye, macular degeneration, glaucoma, cataract, basically every kind of eye disease out there. It's been looked at for that. It's anti-inflammatory benefits.
Wow.
And then saffron. So saffron it's a pricey spice, but it is actually used in a lot of the eye health supplements out there on the market. And saffron's been looked at in macular degeneration studies. Now, those studies looked at really high doses of saffron, like 30 milligrams a day, which is really high considering how expensive it is. But they found that patients who took that actually had lower rates of progression of macular degeneration.
Oh, wow. Fascinating.
Yeah. And then one more spice I'm going to highlight is paprika.
Oh, cool.
So paprika actually has lutein and zeaxanthin too. So if you have like a quarter teaspoon with your, whatever you're eating,
amazing
soup, salad, sprinkle it over foods.
I learned recently that paprika is just dried bell pepper.
It is. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
It is.
I thought it was some like exotic, something that like was like way more esoteric, but no, it's just like dried bell pepper.
Yeah. Ground up red bell pepper. I wish it were, well, if you have your choice of, I think paprika comes in different colors. If you have that choice of colors, I would choose more like the orangey colors because those are probably coming from the orange and the yellow peppers rather than the red peppers.
How do you integrate paprika into your cooking? Like what do you use it on stuff? Like what, I mean,
I use it. So I love to make like avocado tomato salads. And I put in olive oil in there and then I sprinkle some paprika on top.
On a salad?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's good to
know. It adds a kick to it.
Does it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's
I love
definitely
that.
a little spice.
I love that. So cool. Well, man, I've learned a lot. This was super fun, and I'm excited for your book. Ooh, you've got kiwi in here. Damn.
Yeah, are you a fan?
I'm a huge fan, and one of the cool things that I noticed, it's sliced, and you've got the skin on it.
Yes, eating skin.
Yeah, eating kiwi with the skin on is amazing. It's like you're missing out if you're throwing out the skin. it adds like a nice tangy vibe. And people just like throw it out. And there's actually like the thing about fruit that I think that few people realize is that it's towards the surface of the fruit where you tend to find a lot of these like bioactive phytochemicals, you know, like especially the hormetic ones, like the polyphenols, because they're going to concentrate closer to the surface, because that's where these plants typically get preyed upon, you know, or get like the plant cells get damaged by critters. And so that's where they concentrate these like antioxidants, essentially.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's their protective mechanism. So polyphenols, bioflavonoids. We didn't talk about this, but berries, another great fruit. B, it's under B. B is for berry.
This is so cool. It's like a little encyclopedia of all these different foods. Oh, there are the pistachios. Why do you like berries? Why are you a fan of berries?
So many reasons. They have anthocyanins, which are deeply pigmented bioflavonoids. The richest berries with anthocyanins are blackberries and blueberries. And they've actually been studied for retinal health in basic science models. So not in a human model, but in a basic science model, it was very protective, along with quercetin, which is a great, another bioflavonoid. And we also know that berries, especially blueberries, are great for brain health too. So there's one study recently, maybe last year, was published that looked at people who had half a cup of blueberries a day had reduced levels of cognitive decline.
Wow.
So it helps your eyes, helps your brain.
Amazing. I love that bi-directional relationship. What's good for the eyes, good for the brain. What's good for the brain, good for the eyes.
Yeah. Over 50% of our brain is dedicated to our visual system.
Whoa.
Over 50%. So not only processing vision, but how we move our eyes, how we move our eyelids, like all those pathways are integrated into there. So it's a huge percentage of our brain.
You know, it's interesting. It reminds me of the fact that I think in 2020, for the first time, hearing loss was identified as a risk factor for cognitive decline and dementia for the first time. And I wonder if that's also the case, because I know it hasn't yet been sort of spotlighted as such, but I would imagine that like blindness, you know, like vision decline would probably also be a risk factor.
Yeah, it actually has been studied. I can't quote the exact study, but I do remember reading that people who have visual impairment have increased rates of cognitive decline. Not only that, they're at risk for falls, they're at risk for other health issues. Yeah, it's a big problem. Big problem. Man, well, thank you so much for writing this book. Super helpful. It's like an encyclopedia of all the various foods and easy to access foods too, which I think is so important. I mean, you've got bell peppers. I mean, there's so much here. And these are all, there's like nothing esoteric in here really. Like these are all foods that can be found at your average supermarket. So, I mean, I think people are going to find a lot to gain from this book. And I know that like many people struggle with vision problems and other, you know, other chronic conditions. And like, there's so much in here. It's like foods that can help fight inflammation. Yeah. And I actually created an online tool called the Nutrition IQ Test, EYEQ.
Ooh, I love it.
So there's a QR code you can scan in the book that will take you to it. But it's online. And basically all you have to do is answer a couple of questions, like basic questions about your age, your eye health history, your medical history, your family history. And then it will tell you, it'll give you a code. And it's all integrated with different parts of the eye. So cornea, optic nerve, lens, retina. So it'll give you a code COLR. And then it will guide you towards certain types of foods that you can eat that are in the book. So it's a quick way to kind of, you know, there are a lot of foods in the book that I highlight, but if you have a specific condition, like let's say you have cataract, and you want to know what can I do? What foods can I eat to help prevent my cataract from getting worse? You do the quiz, it'll tell you, and then you can find those foods in the book.
Are there any foods that can actually like improve your vision? Like say you're young and healthy and you, for whatever reason, you don't have 20/20 vision. Is there anything I can eat that's going to give me 20/20 vision or better?
I wish.
Those don't exist?
Not that I know of.
No.
If we can come up with them, then we'll have $1 billion idea. But
I've always been really, there's like one thing, there's better than 20/20, right?
Yes, there's 20/15.
That's what I have.
Yeah. So you're all good, Max.
Yeah.
You need to get better. Some people can actually see 20/10.
2010.
There are some, like eagles, for example, can see 20, but some humans can see 2010. And it's based off of the wiring, your optic nerve wiring with your brain. And some people can't see that well. They only see 20/30 because of their wiring. So.
And what do those numbers mean? It's like you can see something that's 20 feet away as if it were 10 feet away?
Yes. So it's based off of, it's calibrated for a certain distance, 20 feet. And it has to do with some optics as well. Like the height of the letter is an optical angle. Like there's a measurement. And so basically when we say like 2020, at 20 feet, you can read that 2020 letter versus if we say 2200, which is significantly worse, in most states, that's kind of the level of legal blindness. That means that at 20 feet, you can only see a letter that somebody should be able to see only at 200 feet away. I don't know if that quite makes sense, but
yeah,
there's a mathematical calibration that's done there.
Interesting. Is 2015 rare?
Amongst healthy people, no.
Yeah. Oh.
No, most people should be able to see 2020 or 2015.
Got it. Great.
But if you can't, that's okay.
Yeah. No, great to know. But yeah, I'm always interested in like how we can make our vision like even better, for those of us that have a growth mindset about things, This is dope. Well, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
It's been great. I had such fun with our conversation. I learned so much too.
I love it. Well, that's like the best kind of conversation to have, isn't it? Is there anything that we didn't cover that you want to add?
I don't think so. I think we covered a lot. Yeah.
Because the floor is yours. But if you feel like we got it all out, then.
Well, maybe one thing. I did mention earlier about blue blocking glasses. That's kind of the big craze. And, there are all these manufacturers now selling these blue blocking glasses. If you're going to get blue blocking glasses, first of all, blue light's not going to permanently damage your eyes in any way. It can cause eye strain. It can cause dry eye or lead to dry eye. It can cause headaches, but it's not going to permanently damage you. So if you feel like you're having eye strain, you want to get blue blockers, get a blue blocking tint that's a deeper tint. Most blue blockers will be clear. They'll look like regular glasses. They're barely blocking any blue light, or they're just simply reflecting off the blue light. They're not really protecting your eyes in that sense. So get a tint that's more like yellow or deep orange or red even.
I have like the full spectrum. I've got a pair that's like amber colored, and then I have a pair that's like red. And it just depends on like what I'm trying to do.
I'm also in that mindset. So I have my 3 different pairs. I don't wear them all the time, but when I do wear them, I feel the benefit.
Yeah.
Like during the day, I would not wear my deep red ones. You just wear the really light ones. And then sometimes I do work late into the night, past when I should be working. And I don't want to get that blue light exposure because then it's going to affect my sleep. When you get too much blue light exposure towards the end of the night, it's harder to fall asleep and stay asleep. So then I wear my deep red ones.
Is there any harm to come from like using our smartphones? I mean, I know obviously like we've talked about like exposure to bright light at night, not the best move to make for sleep, where sleep is concerned. But are these devices in any way damaging our eyes?
Not permanently.
Okay.
Again, not permanently. There was like a media scare back in 2018 where some researchers from the University of Toledo, they took some cells, put them in a petri dish, and exposed them to high levels of blue light. And what they found was the cells died. And so, media jumped on that and they started all these headlines like the blue light from your phone is going to blind you and all this, scare. But the truth is there's a couple of things to look at in terms of that study. First of all, the cells that they put in the dish weren't even eye cells. They were cervical cancer cells.
Ugh, weird.
Yeah. And the reason why they use those is because they grow very well in culture. So a lot of experiments are done with these cervical cancer cells. So cervical cancer cells don't have the natural protective mechanisms that our retinal cells have. They don't have lutein, they don't have zeaxanthin, they don't have all these other antioxidants. So they don't have the internal protections. And so you have to take that study with a grain of salt.
I don't know many people who are shining blue light up their hoo-has with any regularity. So why would they?
Well, when I told that story to somebody, one person said, well, that tells me one thing, that cervical cancer, if somebody has cervical cancer, maybe they should be shining blue light
Interesting,
on those cervical cancer cells.
Yeah.
It's kind of a thought. But
that is kind of a thought. Who knows? Yeah. Light medicine, Phototherapy. Super, super interesting.
Yeah. But no permanent damage. Have your, good sources of lutein zeaxanthin to protect your retina, and wear the blue blockers if you feel a lot of strain. That's all I would say for now.
Beautiful. Thanks for being here. Hey, if you liked that video, you need to check out this one here, and I'll see you there.
And think of it as like, okay, well, knowingly, I'd rather not have pesticides, herbicides, larvicides that are definitely linked to diabetes, cancer, heart disease, hypertension,